Welcome back to another episode of The Art of Volunteering. I'm your host, Stormy Bell. Today, my guest is Amy Tiemeyer. She is the manager of the Northwest region for the Travis Manion Foundation. She is passionate about supporting and empowering those who serve our nation and our communities. Amy has over 30 years of experience in volunteering, coordinating, and contributing to various causes and organizations that promote youth, fitness, military, veterans, and the arts. And she's written a book, Stories of a Volunteeraholic. And she wrote that book for volunteers, hopefully to help people to get involved and love their lives more because they're involved in making things better. So I just want to say that her mission aligns with the mission of the Art of Volunteering, where we motivate and encourage individuals to volunteer to help restore the fabric of our society. And I absolutely love your story. And I can't wait for my listeners to hear about it. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you.
When we start off, I would just like you to share a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you started with it with TMF.
Okay. So, I'm actually, my family, I grew up in a volunteering family, which I think is unusual, not super unusual, but somewhat unusual. And so volunteering, I saw modeled by, from my parents, both my mom and dad and my grandma. And I saw volunteering in a whole bunch of different ways. So my grandma actually used to crochet blankets and for the babies at the local children's hospital. And she did that for years without a program or a nonprofit to go through. Back in, I think, 1989, the nurses actually put her in for a City of Destiny award. And so I bring that up in my book, which we'll talk about later. But because, if you see a need and you feel a need, that's volunteering. And so that's what I grew up seeing. And my dad is always been sort of like an artist entrepreneur. And when I joined the Army, he said, volunteer for everything you want, which most people say, don't ever volunteer. Pay attention. If the line steps back, step with it. But my dad said, you will be voluntold for things you don't like. But if you volunteer for everything you do like, then you're less likely to be doing the things you don't like. And I found that to be incredibly true. When I was stationed in New York at Fort Drum, we call it home of the frozen chosen.
Yes.
I never once shoveled snow. And I was a private,
Okay.
And so if you think about how remarkable it is to live in an area that had all that snow, and I hate shoveling snow, and I never did it because I volunteered for everything that I wanted to do. And so it's interesting. So I've always kind of volunteered. It's ingrained in the fabric of who I am and who my family is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of the reason you just, you move somewhere near new or something like that, and you figure out where to volunteer, whether it's a spouses club or a food bank, kids art program, whatever. And so for me, I don't think there was much of my life that I wasn't volunteering, other than maybe when having babies when they're young.
Yeah.
Because 2 kids will go in 5 different directions.
Very true. Very true. I have 2 myself. Well, they're now young adults and they're like herding cats. So how did you get involved? Well, you volunteered. How did you get involved with the Travis Manion Foundation?
Oh, so I always say I was bamboozled.
Okay.
Okay. And so I have volunteered with youth needing safe spaces, after school programs, art programs over here. And I volunteered with VSOs or veteran service organizations over here. The working with veterans was more tied to my job, right? They didn't ever, so the kids, most of them didn't even know that I was a veteran, or the people who run programs and different things like that, because women don't wear their veteran status the same as men, and our service isn't seen the same as men's.
Okay.
So So I was doing a thing on Joint Base Lewis McChord. Where we fundraise and we do turkeys and hams for junior enlisted with families. So we call it Turkey Drop and Ham Grenade. And this friend of mine, Charlene, we were going unit to unit to drop off the turkeys or whatever. And so as the chapter president, I was going into each of the buses so that I got time with people who had contributed and made sure that, they had the connections. Okay, we're going to there's a gentleman, his name is Jaime, and I was like, okay, we're going to the special forces because I knew he was special forces when he served. And he's like, all right, I'm ready, and it's just, that relationship managing piece. And so
Right.
Charlene's like, well, we're going to be best friends. And, that always frightens me when somebody tells me that. And she's like, you need to get involved with the Travis Manion Foundation. I was like, like, I don't know that I have an opening right now for a new thing, but okay, and so she then invited me to something that she was doing, and then it kind of rolled out. What I didn't realize what is, or where I don't have any memory of, is the conversation that, do you want to get involved in the Travis Manion Foundation and become a mentor? So when you get involved in the Travis Manion Foundation, you become a mentor. You have to go through courses online.
Okay.
You learn about positive psychology, how they use it. You take almost like a personality test, but it's like you find out what your character strengths are, and then they do a background check.
Okay.
And then you do another, and then they show you how to do presentations, coursework, all these different things. And so I kept on texting her. I'm like, what did I sign up for? Like, okay, so one of the things that we did had wine involved. And so I was like, did I say something when I was drinking wine that I didn't realize I said? Like, and so she's laughing at me. She's like, you're so cute. And I'm like, okay, but did I agree to a program, an event? Like I have no clarity on what's going on. She's like, you're almost done. With what? And so we laugh about it because she still works for the Travis Manion Foundation. But I always say I was bamboozled. I was absolutely bamboozled. But what was the reason why I stuck with it is because the curriculum is so good.
Right.
And it's delivered by veterans and families of the fallen to kids in middle school and high school. And so these character and action stories, the activities that were very STEM oriented, and even the icebreakers are really quality content for working with kids. And it was working with kids kind of in a different area. And the kids that TMF targets are just kids. They don't have to be military kids. They don't have to be a junior ROTC. They could be basket weavers of the South Sound. If there's kids present and a mentor wants to do some of the curriculum, I help coordinate that, and I think it's like if I won the lottery, stopped working, I would go back to just being a volunteer for TMF. And I'd probably volunteer almost as much as I work.
Okay.
And so that's how much I love the program.
That's awesome. Can we back up? I don't know if my listeners know who Travis the Manion Foundation is, or what a little bit about the foundation itself.
Sure. So Travis Manion was a Marine Corps officer. He died in Fallujah back in 2007. His family really felt like his legacy, like his motto was, if not me, then who? And he truly believed we need to be building character within ourselves so that we can build character in our communities. And so it started as a family foundation, but then schools started asking Ryan Manion, his sister, to speak and to like further develop different things. And so it actually grew in a very organic way. Find the need, fill the need.
Right.
And then they got very intentional about creating the curriculum, having it based on positive psychology. We every new employee has to take 5 courses through Coursera on positive psychology, so you can fully understand how to utilize it and why we use it. and different things like that, which I think is really great. And so I think the movie 300 was one of his favorite movies. And so that's kind of the Spartan helmet. But it is a TM. If you look at it, you can see the TM in it. And so that's kind of the background of the foundation. And we do expeditions. So it's all based on service. So if we take a group of survivors out to, they do Puerto Rico every year. I took a team out last February and we were in New Orleans and we worked on a new home build. So you're working all day long. And then we go back, shower, change, have dinner, and then talk leadership. Like, what character strengths did you lean into? So that even as a survivor, you're thinking, how can I give back to my community? They say 60% of those who leave service feel like they have a loss of purpose. Families of the fallen, oftentimes they feel like they don't fit in anywhere, like they don't know how to just fit in or move forward, right? And so if we use these demographics, especially when you're working with kids, then they feel like they walk in with this degree of credibility of, that's interesting. I really want to listen to what they have to say. Like when I have a girlfriend who's we call a gold star spouse, lost her husband in battle. Her number one thing to teach is forgiveness, which was surprising to me. Like, I didn't necessarily think that would be it. And she's like, I had to forgive almost like God for taking my husband. I had to forgive my husband for choosing to be a soldier. I had, and so she does this whole conversation with kids that is so honest and engaging.
Yeah.
Like, I can't make that stuff up. I can't bottle it. Her story is so powerful, and getting her involved in the community is so worth it.
Wow. That's just you. It's just so powerful what you're sharing with that. And everyone involved has their own perspective. Like you said, forgiveness. And what is your perspective?
So my top character strengths are honesty, gratitude, love of learning, and zest, which is funny. And it's because I like to bring the party with me.
Okay.
But I'm honest, and honesty is a really great one to teach because we talk about also the shadow side. So I can be mean and say I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And so like it's cool to have the conversation of, so if I know someone's lying or not being genuine, it affects me a little bit different than somebody else. Somebody else might let it kind of roll off their back a little easier, but it is integrity and honesty are so important to me. Like, integrity is one of my core values. Honesty is one of my character strengths. So I have a harder time in that scenario.
Okay.
But I know this about me. And I also can, because not everybody sees honesty the same way. And so, I have learned as I've gotten older that I can just, take myself out of situations and let other people make their choices, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. So TMF works with, you said, veterans, Gold Star families, survivors. How do they know about you? Like, how do people get involved?
So we have a really great marketing or Marcoms team. So they do a lot on Facebook. I think we do lots of videos that are on YouTube and stuff like that. I think it's word of mouth a lot.
Mhm.
When you get into, and I think this for the art of volunteering, when you get people in the right spots, they feel so good about what they're doing. They're screaming from the highest mountains.
Right. Right.
And so I think that's part of it. And yeah, it's the people we work with that multiply. Like, I did a program at what high school. The principal moved to another school, identified some kids having a hard time, reached out to me personally to bring the Travis Manion Foundation there.
Gotcha.
So it's yes, I want to be in every school and every program and different things like that. But it's nice when we're pulled in versus here. I'd like to share with you about the Travis Manion Foundation. Let
Right.
me drop some, one sheets off because that's harder because it's cold, right?
Right. Right. Totally understand. So nationally, international, what's the organization?
So it's national. I mean, we've had TMF stuff happen, I think, in Germany and in Puerto Rico. But I don't know that I would necessarily say like we're global.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's just a couple Spartans doing some amazing work when they can.
True. Fair. And how many Spartans do you have?
So I think we're close to 250,000 Spartans nationwide. Our organization has 75 staff members,
Mm-hmm.
and 7 regions nationwide. So I'm the Pacific Northwest. There's the West. There's Mid Atlantic, Southeast, North, uh, Northeast. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Anyhow, if you look at the
All over.
website, you
Yeah.
would have all of it. But yeah, and we're I like the culture of the company is very much finding your balance. And I will say, like, we do unlimited PTO, which is crazy, but it's because we're all worker bees. And so they actually, they want us to take time off when it's not, backpack giveaway time or MLK is a big, we do 4 service projects per region. So after this, I'm going down to Lacey and we're doing a service project in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. You know, um, and so there's a lot of different components to it.
That's awesome. How long do people stay with the foundation?
So we I think if you're in the right area, they stay for years and years.
Okay.
I think, if they're only involved, because we also do some physical activities, like we have a 9/11 Heroes Run and a Manion Wad and stuff like that. And so those can be a little bit more just scratching the surface and
Right.
aren't getting your fingernails in. But we have Spartans who who have been in active duty and have been, have served as Spartans and mentors in like 3 different locations nationwide. Like I think of one who she just got out of the Navy as a JAG officer, but she's done things like the Marine Corps Marathon, different things in Pennsylvania. She's did a lot down in San Diego when she was stationed there. She does a lot for me up here with Sea Cadets, different things like that. And then, I have another one that's just very similar. Like, was from San Diego. His ship was up here. And then I always joke because it comes up in my region. I'm like, nope, his ship has sailed because it's literally sailed. Like he's no longer in my region. But he might be in the mid-Atlantic. I don't know.
Right.
But I think that's really cool is when people do move and stay involved in TMF because and we try as regional leads to do really warm handoffs. Like I had a really great Spartan mentor out here, and he ended up PCSing and going to Camp Liberty, which is on the East Coast. And I let that team know about them. Like he's fully trained. He's a Gold Star dad and currently serving. And so get them involved, or keep them involved. And so that's been really great. I've done that a couple of times. A couple of leads have done that with me because our volunteers, our mentors mean the world to us.
Absolutely. You couldn't do what you do without them.
Right.
Yeah.
Only 75 employees.
Yeah.
200, close to, I think, 250,000 Spartans nationwide.
Amazing. I love it. I love your impact that you make. Let's transition just a little bit. You've written a book. the alcoholic the stories of a
Story.
volunteeraholic. Tell me, are you a volunteeraholic?
So yes, I do consider myself a volunteeraholic, and I had said for many years, oh, I need to write a book about all these stories of volunteering, and people would say that you should write a book about this or you should write a book about that, and so I did. And I am a part of a networking group where a lot of people were writing books at the and one of our sessions was, or they call it speakeasies, was specifically about writing books. And so they had organizations that did ghostwriting. They had people that had written their own book or self-published, and then I think even a publisher. And so one of the questions that I asked this one person who works for Scribe, which is who did like David Goggins books, some really big names. I'm like, how do you know if you're a good enough writer? I have a master's degree, but I don't. And so I've written a lot, and even in marketing at different points in my career, but it's hard to tell, I thought. And so the CEO of Scribe at the time had me send them 3 samples of my writing,
Mhm.
and then told me I need to write my own book. And so that was really
That's
cool. You know what I
encouraging.
mean? Yeah, it was very encouraging. And so I wrote every night, and it took about a year. Tried to pick what stories I thought were interesting or funny, or had bigger impacts than I had realized going into it, different things like that. I had a friend edit who was not military anything, because the stories in this, my stories for here have a lot of military in them, just because that's how I've volunteered.
Right.
And so I wanted somebody who did not have military experience to read them. And he is a middle school teacher trainer. And so so we went through, and it was a really good process. Like, we went back and forth, and he's like, okay, so the order, like, what made you write the order? And I was like, it was just kind of how I thought about it. So I don't know that the order is correct. And so, like, he spent, I don't know, $150 printing it out, and then, like, him and his partner going over, like, their living room floor, trying to figure out what chapter should be where and stuff
Kinda
like
like
that, and I
moving it
really
around
loved
like
it.
a puzzle, putting
Yeah,
it together.
and so that was really cool, going back and forth with him. He's like, "I don't know what this means," and I'm like, "Oh, squadron." So each service has their own grouping of service members. So in the Army, it's, I have a squad, a platoon, a battalion, a brigade. In the Air Force, it's I don't know what the smallest one, but it's the squadron, air wing, different ones.
Everyone has their own
And
jargon.
yeah. And so he's like, well, I think you need to take a paragraph and explain all that. And so I researched it to make sure I had all the jargon right for all the different services. But um, and that was a good point, because if you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
And he was like, and if you do it now with this one story in the beginning, then if you make comments later on, it'll make sense to them.
Just the way
And I was
it
like,
works
okay,
when you read a book, like you already got that information, just apply it as you go. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Very
And
cool.
so, which is what, so then Fulton Books picked it up. And here's the thing, I don't think I would have been picked up by Fulton Books, or the manuscript would have been accepted, had I not gone through the editing process with this guy.
All right.
And so they edited it again, but their editing was super overwhelming. It was like line by line, like you had to say line 256 was incorrect in this way, line 5827 was incorrect in this way. And to me, I had very little edits because I had already gone through that process. And so that made me, because even though that the other one cost, had costs and stuff like that, I am really glad that I did it that way.
Awesome.
because I think if I was only trying to do it with this one company, it would have been too overwhelming because there would have been too many edits.
Right. I understand.
And
The heavy
so,
lift was already done.
yep. And so that was interesting for me. And so it's actually, so the book is out. It's like on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but the audio book is still being done.
That's what I'm
And
waiting
so,
for. I tend to get books listened to before I sit down and read.
and so the audiobook, what's funny is the lady who's doing it also is not military. And so she kept on saying, so it's in the book it says Judge Advocate General, JAG office. She goes JAG office. So every time the JAG called or whatever, she would say the JAG. And so I had to push it back and say it has to be the JAG.
Yeah.
It's an acronym, not an initialism.
Right. Right.
And so, but it's funny when you have such a military mind, it would not even dawn on me that somebody would look at that and do that.
Right. I understand. Right. Well,
Like, who hasn't heard of JAG? But
I mean, I know JAG and I'm not military. All right. So, can you share maybe one or two of your favorite stories from your book?
one of my favorite stories is actually has to do with JAG. But so I was new as a military relations liaison for a credit union, and they had sponsored an event called the Evergreen Fleet Cruise. And you go out, like the yacht club takes and it's command teams and different people out on yachts all day long. We do this big flag ceremony, have lunch and drink a lot, and then we come back. But it's a nice way for the community members and the leadership at JBLM to kind of have a day off, but be able to meet people and different things like that. So the credit union has always been a pretty big sponsor, so we get extra tickets. But finding people, even like business owners who can take an entire day off, and I didn't have a lot of notice because he wasn't tracking. This was my first year
Right.
working, and so uh, I couldn't get people involved. And so I was like, okay, so I have a friend, and his name is a threatist. And so his mom actually named him a threat is Terrence Brown. And he's about 6'5". He could walk on to a NFL, and possibly make the team kind of looking guy. But him and I had been doing things with kids on in the Tacoma area. Um, he's real passionate about trying to keep boys away from gangs and different things like that. And so we had been doing a lot together. And so I was like, Threat, because so his nickname is Threat. Are you available? And he's like, yeah. So we went on, we went together. And what was interesting is, and I think this is because we were sponsored, we got put on the boat with the general,
Okay.
the first court general at the time. Who's from New Jersey. His name is General Lanza. Really, really neat gentleman. And he was like, him and Threat were just having this major bromance, which he would hate for me to say that way, but like they were just like two peas in a pod. And I always say, like at one point time, General Lanza's like, "Why aren't your boys on post?" And I'm like, "I am one person. None of the kids that we work with look like me." And there's like 17 of them, and I'm a contractor. It was before my husband actually had gone back into the reserves. So I had the only reason why I could be on post is because through my work. And he goes, "Well, I guess it's a good thing you know a general." And I'm like, okay. Like I don't know what that means. And so then him and Threat, he wanted our kids to come in on post and work out with the striker unit. And I'm like, okay, but that's a lot. It sounds simple, but it's actually a lot. And so then we got back. Well, the task from his office didn't come out until August. Well, in August, a lot of the kids that we work with are in football, which is really, really integral for them because it ties your grades with sports, more time off the streets, all the things, right? Well, at the time, most of the kids went to Lincoln High School, and John Kitna was the coach. John Kitna played for the Seahawks, went to Lincoln, I believe, played for the Seahawks, went back to Lincoln. Well, he's a celebrity coach. So getting him to answer an email from somebody he doesn't know, you know what I mean? And
Right.
so I emailed him multiple times a day, just like, I don't know if they're going to a spam. I don't know. And so I was at Lincoln picking up some of the kids. He walks down. He's like, "Are you Amy?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, I am. Will you stop emailing me if I say yes?" He goes, "And I say no to every program, but I'm going to say yes to yours. But I'm going to need you to stop emailing me." And I'm like, sold. And so then the next thing, so the JAG office called me because you have to get the kids on post and you have to have all these different things. And the officer's like, "What is your nonprofit status?" And I'm like, "We don't have a nonprofit status because we're not nonprofits. It's just me and Threat.
Right.
We're just doing what we do." And he's like, "Why do you think you can get this done?" I don't. Like, this wasn't my idea. Um, and so he basically hung up on me. And I'm like, "Well, that was nice." So in my mind, I imagine this. I don't know if he was a captain or a lieutenant or whatever, walking down to General Alonzo's office and is like, "This woman, her ducks aren't even in the pond," and all this stuff. And he turned that guy around. And I feel like in my mind, the story I tell myself is that he said some things like her ducks aren't in the pond or whatever, because this is the only time in my entire life the Jaggets called me back to apologize
Oh.
for, for that this is not a problem, ma'am. And, it's going to happen. Thank you for your patience. I apologize for my tone and hanging up. Like like they're lawyers. They're usually just brisk and that's fine. But so I laugh. So the story I tell myself is that I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall,
Yeah.
but he thought what General Alonzo's response was. But then I was like, I pushed back. I was like, these kids don't have IDs and they don't have parents that are going to get them IDs, and they have very traditionally ethnic names. And they're for real, their names. But I just, like he's like, "Ma'am, it does not matter. Fill the form out the best you can. It's all good." So then I was like, how do I get 17 kids on post? I drive a Kia Forte. And even if you clown car it, that's like six,
Yes.
you know. And so once a week, Threat and I teach leadership to the kids. And so we were sitting out under his stoop at his apartment complex, and I look over and it's the Black Episcopal Church, and there's two church vans. I'm like, "Do you know that pastor?" He's like, "Well, I think I've met him once." And I'm like, "Well, let's go." And so I talked to the pastor, and the pastor let us borrow one of the vans, said, "Just fill it up with gas."
Nice.
Yeah. And so my dad, which is funny on so many levels, he drove the Black Episcopal Church van, um, picked up all the kids. They got, and also the reason why it was important for the coach to give permission for the kids, because if the kids missed even one practice, they missed the first game. And I didn't want these kids to be
Right.
penalized for doing this program. So we go out, and the striker unit was not thrilled. I didn't feel was thrilled with the tasking in the beginning. And so the XO, which is like a second in command, he's like, "Okay, my soldiers are going to take it easy on your guys." And I'm like, "Oh, no, your soldiers are going to need how to bring it. These kids run from police all the time." And they're in sports, and so we did this like a formation, and then they did sprints, and my kids were beating the soldiers. So the soldiers were like trying to book it, and my kids are super fast, right? Then we got to around this corner where it was an obstacle course, and then the soldiers outperformed the kids because they knew how to work together as teams. So helping each soldier up over different things like that. And so that was really cool for my kids to see how to be a team player, how to work well with others, different things like that. And so that was really neat. And then we went to what we call a DFAC, which is when I was in the military, was the chow hall, but it's the dining facility.
Right.
And my kids oftentimes didn't get 3 square meals a day. And so their eyes were like this big that you could get all you want to eat and it's like made to order. They're like,
Wow.
this is crazy. And so one of the smallest guys, his name was Marquell, he had like 3 plates and the uh commander was like, there's no way that kid's eating all that. And I'm like, oh yes, he's gonna stand
Yeah.
up halfway through, push his stomach down and eat all of it. And he did. And he was like, that's remarkable. And I'm like, and I didn't get into it with the EXO, but then they went to do all the simulations and talked about all the vehicles in their motor pool, all the different things like that. And so it was really cool. We went back to the unit and the unit had bought like Subway for all the kids. And the soldiers talked about why they were serving,
Mhm.
what they liked about the Army, about their positions, different things like that, which was really cool. And then each one of my kids, without being prompted, like I can't say that enough. Like I didn't talk to the kids about expectations on behavior or anything. The logistics of it was my entire world, right? Every one of my kids stood up, thanked the guys for their service, talked about what they loved the most about the day and how impacted they were. Like it was so emotional that the commander actually had come for lunch and he had brought patches for the kids and he sent his runner back and he coined the kids, which is a really big thing in the military. And that coin is precious metal for these kids,
Right.
you know. And um, so the day was just like it just felt like the stars aligned, and it was this beautiful day. All 17, like when you look at the impacts that people don't realize, all 17 youth graduated high school.
Nice.
4 have graduated college, 3 went into the service, but it's just those impacts. Like, and I was talking to a friend this morning, General Alonzo doesn't know those impacts.
Right.
Like he had this idea and wanted to do this thing, but but it was for the impact of what he felt both for the soldiers and the kids. And what I think is it was a hard project. It
Yeah.
wasn't there was a lot of working pieces. It had nothing to do with my job. I could have let the general down at any time and just on with my life. And so that's part of the reason why it's in the story is because sometimes, like even if things are complicated, moving forward, and doing it was beautiful to me. And like it's one of my favorite projects because of all the parts and pieces and different things that I didn't even think about.
Oh, that's awesome. You have to send this episode to the general so he can hear about the impact that that day had on those students.
Yeah, I will do that. I will do that because he's still in this area.
That'd be
But
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, so that's one of my favorite ones. Probably the other one, which is quicker, is like the Zombie Apocalypse 5K. I came up with that idea to engage with junior enlisted soldiers.
Right.
So AUSA is the Association of the U.S. Army, and they are a military service organization versus a veteran service organization. So they want to be a part of the service story from the private to the general,
Okay.
from the first year you serve through the last. They do things for veterans and retirees, but it is the active duty service member that and I love them. I got involved with that was one of my favorite ones because it didn't matter whether you're an officer enlisted, whether you were a spouse, whether you were just a community member. If you love the Army, they want you a part of their team. And so I always like that inclusiveness of it. And so we were trying to, throwing spaghetti on the wall, trying to figure out what we could do for junior. So we have, turkey drop and hand grenade, junior enlisted with families. But what
Right.
about the single soldiers? What would be dynamic to get them involved in doing something with AUSA? AUSA has the reputation of being for the old people. because any service organization really does, right?
Right.
Unless it's like YMCA or, like a youth organization, most people see them as an elderly organization. And so I was like, what if we did a geriatric 5K, like made fun of that? And you could hear a pin drop. Like, okay, that idea did not fly. So then I was like, well, what about a zombie apocalypse 5K? And they're like, what would that look like? And so I Googled zombie runs and different things like that. And so you have flag football belt. So if you have 3 flags, if you make it back with at least one, you lived. If you lose all your
Okay.
flags, you're a
Yeah.
zombie. So I had 2 different medals, the survivor medal and the death medal. And so like all the things that you could say, like this, I was like, pets and babies can't come. Zombies want full course meals, no, appetizers,
Appetizers or desserts.
and it was, you don't have to be the fastest runner, just faster than your friend. It's all about being able to tell the story at the end.
Yeah.
And we had all these funny different things that for the zombie apocalypse 5K. And then everybody who ran became a USA member. That was part of the running registration fee.
Right.
And
Okay.
so our numbers, so we got a national award for increase in numbers because we had like 150 runners. And it was in this Stillicum Historical Park, and I had a female veteran who owned a company that she put like dead bodies in the trees and like like and we also said you had to be like 8 and older because it's a zombie run. We didn't, you don't want to scare a person or whatever.
Right. Right.
I made a mistake. I had the Rangers as the zombies. So we always say it's like Dragon Ball Z zombies, not Walking Dead zombies. So the first year they said that the zombies were a little too aggressive.
Oh.
And so, and somebody goes, and you're wrong to have the Rangers as your zombies. Rangers will not be the zombies. The chem guys will be the zombies. So then, so eventually I got the 110th Chemical Battalion. They're the zombies, and they're not, nearly as in shape as Rangers. So that kind of cut down on the aggressiveness and stuff like that. But we had unofficial medics on site from like the medical unit on JBLM. So it was a way to get different things. And then I had companies in the community that would donate things. So we had raffles for those who did it. So, but if you survived, you would get maybe like a 4-man tent or a gas card or, things that you could
Okay.
use in zombie
Thanks.
apocalypse, backpacks, different, all sorts of cool things. If you died, you would get detergent to clean the blood, Febreze, because now you smell bad, some mints for your zombie breath, and maybe a movie to work on your skill set.
I love it. That sounds like so much fun.
And so it was one of those things where companies just were like, people were like, oh my God, I want to be involved in this event. And so, of course, the last one was before the pandemic.
Right.
And I'm no longer involved so much in AUSA, but so I don't know. And with Travis Manion, that's not really appropriate. So
Right.
I don't know if I'll do another zombie 5K, but I kind of like to because it was so much fun.
It just
I
sounds
just
like
haven't
fun. I'd
figured
almost like
out.
to just sit and watch it happen.
And we had like a haunted house come out and do the makeup.
Oh, so
Like,
they look the part too.
yes. Oh, but my favorite racer, we had a woman who dressed up as a pregnant bride and had like even like a not a fake like an old time baby carriage.
Okay.
And so she freaked the zombies out because they didn't want to like go after a pregnant woman, but she wasn't actually pregnant. It was fake. It
Yeah.
was awesome. Like, and so like if I were to do it again, I would also do maybe like a costume contest because that was great. I mean, and what a great way to like if a zombie doesn't like, are you on the team or wait, I see a bell, like how
How are you on
that's a
the
good
team? Yeah,
that's
that's
a good
awesome.
strategy,
Oh,
different things like that. and Leroy Petrie Medal of Honor recipient actually ran in, I think, my first one, and that was
Yeah,
fun.
that sounds fun. All right, let's transition out of this. But first, I want to say everyone should get this book and read all these stories because I think they're awesome. But being on a podcast like you are today is not new to you. You co-host a podcast, right? Helping the brave. Is
Yep.
that
And I was asked to co-host Ed Parco. That was he created it, and he actually had some co-hosts in the beginning, a couple of them, and wanted to have like 3 or 4 co-hosts. But then the other people, just their lives got busy, and so then it just became Ed and Amy. But he's a Navy veteran down in Modesto, and that has stretched me, as I did not initially think that I would ever do a podcast. Not maybe just not knowing much about them and all the platforms, and I'm not someone who loves technology. And all of a sudden now I'm doing StreamYard and Canva and Candly and, all the different things to be a part of his team. And so it did stretch me as a leader, which was good with podcasting. We
right?
talked transition services, and we talk like we've had people on. Captain Charlie Plum was a prisoner of war for over 6 years during the Vietnam conflict. And he's been on the podcast, and he talks about resiliency and different things like that. We've had kids that are, got out less than a year from when we had the podcast, and we talk about we feel so much is done for senior leaders and officers for transition, but not nearly as much due diligence is done for junior enlisted. But I also but we're also challenged with sometimes the junior enlisted aren't as open to understanding, um, and not the challenges, but just all the extra things that they could do that would benefit them. And then I'm just through all the stories, I think, it's formulating new theories of if or the expectation that the first job you get out of the military, for whatever reason, we want that to be the end all be all. But 99% of the time, nobody stays at the first job they got after the military. So then it makes me wonder, like, why do we have that expectation?
Right.
Like, if our worlds are about learning, you don't know what you don't know. And so I have another friend who was talking about almost having like 4 different jobs, but having that be the plan. And after you've done each type of job for 4 months, you transition to the next one. And then at the end of that, then you pick. And theoretically, that could be, maybe better, like because it gives you 4 different environments, and then you could figure out what you like or didn't like about ones, and see like if the one that you thought you would like the most, if
Is what
that,
you really want to do. Yeah.
yep. And so I think it's an interesting podcast simply because we do talk about those nuances, and we also talk about veteran services, because sometimes I think VSOs have silos of information. Like you
Mm.
can have all these great resources, but people aren't getting there. But then here again, I think that's the communication problem, even with the world. Like if you're not ready for the information or looking for the information, maybe you're not, you might have heard it, but you're not paying attention. And so it doesn't actually stick.
Which is, I don't know if that's just a military thing. I think that's just life.
Right. And so here again, so it's trying to get the word out, but also understanding just those nuances. And I think Ed and I also put a lot of emphasis on mental health and normalizing mental health,
Right.
because that is also a big part of the challenges. Is
Right.
that if you're not dealing with your traumas, if you can't unpack certain things, and understanding all the different modalities. So talk therapy is one modality. EMDR is another one, equine therapy or service animals, or, like all these things. And everybody needs to try all of them.
Right.
Like, you could be surprised. You could be like, I never thought I would do a group class ever. And every week, because I facilitate for merging vets and players, so it's for combat veterans and professional athletes, and it's a peer-to-peer counseling or peer-to-peer mentoring, and you'll have people that are like, I never thought this would be the group for me,
And it is. Yeah.
and it is.
Wow.
So
That's awesome. All right. So, in 60 seconds or less, can you wrap up why you give back? Why do you volunteer? Like, what's your passion?
so it is where I get my joy. Like, I volunteering for me is life. Like, if I were to stop volunteering, I think I would go to I know I would go to a very dark place. It is where I get rejuvenated, and it's the people that I love that love me in those. And so it's those, that's my friend base, it's my social network, it's my joy.
Very good. I love it. You kept it the 60 seconds. All right. Now we're getting closer to the end of our conversation. So, my question is a blooper. Can you share a blooper? Something that didn't go wrong per se, but it didn't go as planned. And what did you learn from the experience?
Well, I would say, like, I shared the kind of bloopers with the zombie apocalypse.
Right.
Um, um, I think another one would be doing the working with the youth. We did leadership and wanted to get the kids to take, almost like, nowadays I would use extreme ownership as a way. I probably would have even used the book with the kids, but where they didn't understand that how they do anything is how they do everything. And so getting them to um, get up for school on time, take accountability for their work, different things like that. And so that, I don't know if it was a blooper as much as it took so much more convincing, where, I guess it was because I was raised military and different things like that. I was like, well, this just makes sense. But in a world where you live in chaos, it's not that simple. And so I think, but I do feel like any bloopers, it's learning over and over again.
Yeah.
And making it better each time. Like, and I do think learning, I think, is the first year is the best year to make all the mistakes and be the most gracious with yourself. You
I
know,
agree. Yeah.
you can take my experience will get me so far with a new endeavor. Like, and I, try to do whatever, but I also understand the first year you do anything, you just need to understand it's not all going to go right, and it's okay. It's the only way it will get better. If you did everything perfect, it couldn't get better.
Very true. Very true. You live and you learn.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And
All
I think
right.
that's what true character is too.
Yes. Yes. Well, we're coming to the end. I have one last, I'm going to give you the platform to love, just love on. And you can choose TMF, your book, the podcast, just why people should learn more, get involved, tune in, read, just go for it.
Well, I would, it's hard because I love it all, but in volunteering, like, I guess the whole point of my book for me is I want twofold. I want people to realize that their stories are powerful when they volunteer. And so, to some degree, like, I would love for somebody who's maybe not a volunteer to look at trying to find their niche and volunteer in a couple different places to figure that out. I would love the person that's maybe more like me, the volunteeraholic, to go, oh my God, I have the greatest story for you. And then subsequent books will be compilations so that it's from the perspective of the volunteer. So many nonprofit books are about fundraising, about even the volunteer experience, sort of, but from the leadership down. I want these stories to be community members. Like we have so much dissension in our society right now, especially coming into a um, presidential election. And I feel like people need to remember that this whole country is built on all of us. And if the more, and to get involved in, so this is another, could be a reason to volunteer in the areas of the, that you don't understand. So if you don't understand homelessness, volunteer at a shelter so that you can get those stories from those people of what, the 5,000 things that went wrong that got them there, or where they are, the loss, the whatever. And so that you can gain perspective and grace for a demographic that maybe you struggle with. If you feel like the youth are lost today, they're just horrible, volunteer in a school. Schools need volunteers in every community, and so volunteer in the area that you're not, you're comfortable in. And that would be, but do it with grace and love. And I think that's a great way. And also, if you have possibly social anxiety, something like that, using it as a safer social network, like maybe volunteer at a pet charity.
Right.
So, your peopling is only a couple people, but you have these great animals that also need love, and just really stepping away from comparative superiority. Like, just because I work with youth doesn't mean that I'm better than somebody who works with animals, or vice versa. Like, we just need to appreciate each other more. And so
I
that's what I want from my book, is maybe a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of, oh, I have a great story for you,
well,
So,
so we'll read this one and we'll wait for the second edition to come out.
yeah.
Okay. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being my guest today. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I know my listeners have as well. So I'm going to ask my listeners to check out her book. As she said, you can get it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and we're going to put the links to it in the notes. We'll also put a link to her podcast, and take the time or share it with someone who is a veteran who might like to listen to her podcast and just learn from it. So I want to say thank you again. Thank you for listening. If you found value in today's episode, please rate and review it on wherever you're listening. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Art of Volunteering. Have a great day.